Greetings, and welcome to Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. Here we look at the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective. We also look at sport through the lens of history in the past, present, as well as in the making. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure you get social with Sports 101, as well as myself by following me on social media at Coach_Harp412 or Facebook under Jamar Harp. You can get social with Sports 101 and the litany of SportsZone Chicago's other shows by following SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is a sports talk app. You can watch and listen to my show, and many other shows. If you miss something, don't worry about it. Go to YouTube, and just hit in Sports Zone Chicago. So again, go to YouTube and type in Sports Zone Chicago. Make sure you add yourself. Besides that, we want everyone to download the Sports Zone Chicago app. The Sports Zone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. This week, we will be discussing Black Monday in relation to college football. Black Monday used to be the Monday after the regular season ended in the NFL, where NFL head coaches were fired. Now, just like in the NFL and college football, coaching changes are being made earlier and earlier, especially with the transfer portal and recruiting being such a bigger trend than it's ever been before. You want people in there early so you can identify people and get so many things set up. Because again, most competitors are offering something similar. So you really have to identify these prospects to see what they really want and what you can pitch them to come to your institution. All right, so if you look at this season already, there's been numerous college football coaches that have been fired from their head jobs at such schools such as USC, LSU, Washington, TCU, Virginia Tech, and Texas Tech, as well as many others and more that are coming as soon as the regular season is over. USC, LSU, Washington, and TCU have all finished in the top 10 within the college football playoff era. So these are very relevant brands at this time. The Huskies and the Tigers have made the playoffs, and LSU won a national championship after the 2019 season. All of these schools listed aren't necessarily powerhouse programs, but they have the name recognition from the past. So they're still holding on to that. And by invigorating their program with a new head coach, they hope to get some new recruits and improve themselves in the division or conference that they're in. So at the end of the year, they play in a bigger bowl game, getting a bigger payout because the mighty dollar always rules at the end in collegiate athletics, which is supposed to be amateur. But I digress. All right, so this picture right here is of Washington State coach who had got fired, Nick Rolovich, because he didn't comply with the state of Washington vaccine guidelines. Now, there was a waiver put in by Coach Rolovich stating he had religious reasons, and there's some speculation. It was approved on one level at the institution, and on another level was denied. But still, he is a Pac-12 or Power 5 coach that was fired. Currently, you have Dan Mullen in trouble at Florida, and there's other coaches on the hot seat that they don't finish out their regular season above 500. And some of these coaches, if they do finish at 500, their names could be hired to the, as they say, gone fishing list. Some of these coaching jobs have already been filled already, such as Texas Tech. Right here, you can see Joey McGuire. The Red Raiders hired McGuire to place Matt Wells, and what they thought was a very shrewd move. The reason they did that is because McGuire, he comes from Baylor. He is a graduate of the University of Texas. And again, he is known to recruit Texas very well. If you know anything about Baylor, even if they lose, they still produce those high-power offenses. And they just had a big win this past weekend that a lot of people didn't think they were going to pull out due to their offense, in particular their receivers. and Coach McGuire had a big part to play in that. You also have Jim Moore Jr., who was hired at UConn, and they're trying to get some name and brand recognition by bringing in an ex NFL head coach to run their brand, which is recently new in the college football landscape. When you think of UConn, you'll think of basketball, particularly women's basketball. But football is trying to get brand recognition within its own institution. So by hiring a former NFL coach, they hope to revitalize um, or start a tradition of winning at UConn. Their former coach, Randy Edsall, resigned September 6th after just 2 games in which he both lost. He lost both of them, excuse me. This is Edsall's second stint at UConn. The first was from 1999 to 2010, and that's when he saw the program. He ushered it from FCS to FBS, and that culminated with a trip to the Fiesta Bowl in 2010. He then returned in 2017, and that produced this after that a 6-32 record. UConn didn't play last year due to COVID concerns, and right now their interim head coach, or before Coach Moore was hired, was Lou Spanos. You also have Clay Helton, who had been on the hot seat the past few seasons for just being average at USC, which is considered a blue blood program, and they have high expectations every year, especially after the Pete Carroll era, which they haven't been able to replicate, and they still want to hang on to that and duplicate it. So Clay Helton, who was just average, just riding along, was fired after losing 42-48 to Stanford in week 2. He has recently accepted a head coaching job by Georgia Southern, which is a non-Power 5 school, but does give him the ability to get another head coaching job and see what he's cut from at not such a large institution. He replaced Steve Sarkisian in 2015 and compiled a 46-24 record. Now we know Sarkisian now is at the University of Texas trying to get their program turned around. Their athletic director just came out with a vote of confidence for him, saying they're not jumping off the ship yet after 1 year. And we know how crazy the people are at Texas about football and the expectations they have every year just because they're in the state of Texas and the University of Texas is the flagship institution that they should be in the BCS playoff. And again, they're reliving the years of Vince Young in that epic game against USC, and which culminated in them winning the national championship. Um, Again, Sarkisian's record included the program's last Pac-12 championship in 2017. So even though he won a Pac-12 championship, he still had a 46-24 record, which is unacceptable at such a program. USC slipped to 19-14 from 2018 to 2021. So it's you can infer from those numbers that he won with Sarkisian's players, Coach Sarkisian's players, and not his own, because their biggest win was in 2017, and he replaced Coach Sark in 15. So he still had a lot of Coach Sarkisian's players. Right now, Dante Williams is the interim coach at USC, and again, they're expected to hire a splash hire after a season, most likely from the professional ranks, or there's some candidates that we'll talk about in the near future. These candidates include Urban Meyer, who's just not getting it done in the NFL. You can look, he's aged about 5 years already in 1 year. Just the game, his game plan, his type of game versus the modern NFL. I know everybody invokes references of Tim Tebow. However, defenses have evolved since that time, and that was about 10 years ago. So with everyone playing this hybrid 4-2-5 defense or some type of shell of that, a lot of the things that you do in college don't work in the NFL because you have better players in the middle of the field, and particularly the nickelback and linebackers that can drive and get under routes that players can't do on a college level, thus limiting these type of offenses. And also the backside DNs, play the run very well, and you can't get a pro quarterback hit like you do a college quarterback, because a starting quarterback in the pros is your face of your franchise, and you want him to be that face for quite some time. So if you're running the option, it's very unlikely in a 17 game season that he will last. You also have Bob Stoops, who was in consideration for the USC job. Currently, Coach Stoops is a Fox sports analyst, and there's been speculation that he wants to get back in coaching. Another candidate is James Franklin. James Franklin is currently the head coach at Penn State. He comes to Penn State after a stint at Vanderbilt, which he did very well. Remember, Coach Franklin is a native of Pennsylvania, and he said Penn State was his dream job, but we've heard that before in collegiate athletics. And if the money comes and the opportunity arises, why not take it? And if your name is being thrown in the mix due to your turnaround at Penn State after the fortunate incidences of Coach Paterno and his staff, revitalizing that name brand after such a tragic incident, and getting in not only relevant in social media and in the taste and good graces of people's minds, but also on the football field, being consistent top 10 team in the last few years of his tenure. So that has earned James Franklin consideration for a head coaching job at the University of Southern California. I apologize. Then we have Mr. Row the Boat, PJ Fleck, the head coach at Minnesota. He's been credited with doing a lot with less and being relevant in the Big Ten, obviously with powerhouses such as Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State. He hasn't quite won a championship yet, but he's made the program more relevant, and the brand is more relevant than when he got there, and that's showing the type of recruits that they're coming in. Remember, all this is about brand marketing now. All these teams have social media pages. A lot of the larger teams have people that exclusively work the social media pages, graphics designers, all types of things to establish a brand in a day and age when especially our children are plugged into their cell phone 100% of the day. We have Mario Cristobal, the former offensive line coach at the University of Alabama, former starter for the Miami Hurricanes in their early glory days. He is now the head coach at the University of Oregon, and he has Oregon in their conference championship game this year. He's increased their brand notoriety, and yes, their brand notoriety can increase even though they're sponsored by Nike. They used to be sponsored by Nike in the top 5 program. However, defenses, I believe, caught up to that offense in some capacity. Coach Cristobal has been able to come in and bring that program to a top 5 program, get recruits such as Kayvon Thibodeau, who was the number 1 recruit and most likely the number 1 pick in this year's NFL draft, unless a quarterback goes before him. So he'll be at least a top 3 pick in this year's NFL draft. He is also in consideration, and these are some of the top candidates for the USC job. Urban Meyer, oftentimes people say, why are you considering him? He's going to be the target of speculation for an entire season, especially if he makes that transition to the NFL, which he's struggling in. Meyer has a 187-32 record and 3 national championships as an FBS head coach. Remember, he started at Bowling Green, where he ran the single wing with Omar Jacobs. Then he went to the University of Utah with Alex Smith. And then he went to the University of Florida with Chris Leak, who a lot of people don't credit for winning the first national championship. Tim Tebow was a backup. Chris Leak won the first national championship. Now, obviously, Tim Tebow for the second national championship. So he's had some great quarterbacks, some great players in his tenure, and that's how he's able to win 187 games and lose only 32. And obviously, he's known for one of the best recruiters of all time, being a players coach. You've read stories on ESPN about his quote unquote players council and his, let's say, leniency sometimes in regards to discipline based on how good you are of a player and how you produce on the field. Um, you also have Coach Stoops, um, who is another prime candidate, even though Coach Stoops is 61 years of age. He did come back to coaching briefly when he was a head coach in the now defunct XFL. Now, I don't know if he's going to take a job when that league starts up again, but his name is in consideration because, again, USC wants to make a splash hire, either an NFL guy or a college coach with a large brand name recognition that can bring in players. Um, Stoops' record is 190 and 48 at Oklahoma, and obviously he won a national championship there. He also had 10 conference championships, and he could bring a sort of hard nose, that Youngstown, Ohio, no nonsense style to Los Angeles, so to actually produce something that wins on the field. Because in the city of Los Angeles, you're not relevant if you don't win. No one will come watch you because there's so many entertainment options between collegiate, professional sports, and just going to the beach and leisure sports being a big thing in Southern California. If James Franklin went, he wouldn't have no nemesis such as Ohio State, and he could be the quote unquote big dog in that conference. Chip Kelly is trying to build something at UCLA, but if USC throws all their money and weight behind a new head coach in regards to building facilities, renovating the Rose Bowl, and the big thing they can do is with the name, image, and likeness, and that's where they can kill the game at. It's possible that every recruit at USC, as well as UCLA, for example, that each recruit can possibly be a six-figure player as a true freshman, due to where the schools are located in Los Angeles, California, and with so many uh, Hollywood there. There's so many deals that you can get, especially being a player at those two schools. So it'll be fun to see this signing day what they're able to do, because a lot of teams now, that's a part of your recruiting pitch. Is how much can I get paid, and now players and parents can say that openly and legally to coaches, whereas in the past, that had to be underneath the table, that conversation when you went outside, or something of that example that I hear from stories on TV, because obviously that's of yesteryear, especially with the NLI deals coming up. So effectively, parents can talk with coaches and say, well, what NLI deal do you have in place for my son? If you would like me to come to your school, how much is it? Is it guaranteed for 4 years? So just as the quarterback at the University of Alabama is a millionaire and lives in a dorm, you can have people that make 200, 300, 500,000 for 4 years playing collegiate football and come out no debt because they're on full scholarship with maybe $1 million, $2 million in the bank if invested wisely. So again, that's a part of recruiting now. James Franklin, he does have a $4 million buyout at Penn State, but that will not be difficult to manage for someone like USC. And again, he can be the big dog in that conference and not have to deal with someone like Ohio State. Fleck has a persona that will sort of be Hollywoodish, especially in his looks. But again, can he keep recruits in that area, and can he compete with Chip Kelly at UCLA? He's 57 and 42 with his combined stops at Western Michigan and Minnesota, but those were intensive rebuilding programs. And again, don't show his true scope as a coach, because he again elevated both of those programs to higher than what they were in the collegiate recruits' minds. He led the Western Michigan to the New Year's Day Six Bowl and almost put the Gophers in the Big Ten championship game in 2019. But again, the little engine that could, or the boat stopped rowing, and they weren't able to make it there. But again, the University of Minnesota and Western Michigan's brands were highly elevated once Fleck was added to the program. Another thing about him, he's an offensive mind, and that's what people are looking for nowadays. Well, James Franklin is, you would say, a defensive mind. Cristobal's an offensive line coach. So there's somebody that can really, throw the ball up, put a show on turf. That's what something to look for, especially in a market such as Los Angeles. Again, with Cristobal, the Ducks are the two-time Pac-12 champions, and they're currently positioned to go to the Pac-12 championship this year. He's worked under Nick Saban and incorporates a lot of practices from his program. And if he took it to the West Coast, how successful will he be? So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back with Sports 101, we're going to talk about some more big schools and their coaching changes. Again, this is Jamar Harp, and you're watching Sports 101.
Please stop and listen, because this important message may directly apply to you or someone dear to you. Several thousand African American former full-time CPS teachers were unfairly terminated starting in the mid-90s and continuing to the 2000s. If you are one of those many former CPS teachers who was unjustly terminated, or if you are the immediate relative of a now deceased unjustly terminated former CPS teacher, you may qualify to participate in a lawsuit at no upfront cost to you. Please call 773-580-7183 immediately for more information. That's 773-580.
See me. See me.
See me. See my dark skin and my kinky hair.
See me. Don't see past me.
Don't see through me.
See me.
See my tan skin and my curly hair.
See me.
Don't see past me.
Don't see through me.
See me.
See my face, wet with tears from years of oppression.
See my hands, weathered and worn from decades of pulling myself up through your society.
See my feet split from centuries of walking your delicate line.
See me.
See me.
See me.
I'm tired.
I'm tired.
I'm tired.
Good evening and welcome back. I'm Jamar Harp, and again, this is Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. We like to look at the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective through the lens of history in the past, present, as well as in the making. Make sure you get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. SportsZone Chicago can be found on Twitter at SportsZoneCHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, we want everyone to download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Again, this week we're talking about Black Monday happening so early in college football. If you're just joining us, Black Monday is usually the Monday after the regular season in the NFL when coaches are fired. The term is now permeated into college athletics and particularly college football because firings are happening so frequently and so early. This year, you had coaches quit or get fired after the second game of the season, and there's more coaches expected to be fired at the end of the regular season throughout the bowl season. Staying on topic, the next school we like to talk about is Mr. Go Tigers himself, Ed Orgeron. Ed Orgeron was very lucky because he's a great D-line coach, but he hasn't shown the abilities to be a great head coach yet. Remember, if Joe Burrow doesn't transfer to LSU, most likely they wouldn't have won the national championship and he would have already been fired. Regardless of that fact, the expectations are always high at LSU. I remember they won a national. Besides the last one they won a few years ago, the last national championship they won was under Coach Saban before he went to Alabama. And they always have expectations, and particularly due to the level of in-state talent that they have in Louisiana. Being a graduate of Grambling State University, I can attest forehand as such talent that they have North and South Louisiana. If you look at the schools that benefit from it, LSU and Southern, Coach Napier at Louisiana Lafayette, Grambling, of course, Southeastern University in Hammond, Louisiana, Tulane, so many other schools within the state of Louisiana that benefit from the in-state talent, which is fueled LSU. Again, this is why these expectations were so high and not being able to meet them. Coach Orgeron was forced down, so at the end of the year, he'll be replaced. Now, they just brought in Joe Brady disciple, Jake Peets. I actually know Coach Peets. He used to be a scout for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He then moved into quality control at the University of Alabama, and then moved to quarterbacks coach, and then became a coordinator. Again, with such great quarterback play that they had under Joe Burrow, and having that drop down is hard for any offense to work on that same level. So I don't know if Coach Peets will be there with the new head coach, or he'll find him another job, most likely. So let's keep an eye out for Coach Peets and his landing spot as well, because we all know when head coaches get fired, usually the coordinators are fired as well. The next coach that we have in line that is being discussed for the LSU job is Coach Mel Tucker. He's been a popular name for a long time. He was the architect to those great defenses at the University of Georgia, and was a defensive coordinator in the national championship game that Georgia had Alabama beat down to the final seconds, where that cover 2 was called. Most likely it was probably cover 6, where 2 to the boundary and 4 to the field. And Tua had subbed in for Hurts and threw that strike to Devon Smith. As a true freshman, he caught that ball for a touchdown. And Georgia had Alabama beat up into the last 30 seconds. He was the architect of those defenses. and that led him to get the head job at University of Colorado, and then increasing their brand in a short amount of time. He moved to Michigan State, where he's been able to use his home town references of Cleveland as well as Northeast Ohio to get a recruiting advantage and be a top 10 program currently this year. He's coached both Alabama and Georgia. And again, he is a candidate for this job. Now, another candidate that's being circled around the wagons again is Jimbo Fisher. A lot of people say it was dumb for him to leave, but currently he's the head coach at Texas A&M, and he was hired by the current LSU athletic director, Scott Woodard. He's making a king's ransom at Texas A&M, and LSU obviously will pay him more than that. But if they want to go into this buyout clause and go back, we'll see. But they do have a list of candidates as we're going down, and he is one of them. But the kicker out the entire situation is the contract Jimbo Fisher signed at Texas A&M does not have a buyout clause. So they can essentially pay off his year and then negotiate to make him probably the highest, well, not probably, the highest paid coach in college football. Obviously have to build a new shiny facility for recruiting, and then try to keep the state of Louisiana top players within the state of Louisiana. If he can do all those things, then most likely you'll have a good shot at winning at the flagship school of the state of Louisiana, LSU. Our next candidate for the head job at Louisiana State University is Billy Napier. He's been a candidate at other SEC schools, namely South Carolina, Arkansas, and Tennessee, but has turned them down. He wants to take a job in the SEC where he can win a national championship. He doesn't feel it's relevant if he has a major brand on the mid-major level or a non-Power 5 level of the BCS, and he goes to a BCS team that's just an average brand that does nothing for him. Again, he recruits the state of Louisiana well, where they're at in Cajun country in Southwest Louisiana. And he's been the top of his conference, usually Appalachian State in Louisiana, Lafayette, or Louisiana now as they're called. Again, that's another reference to them adding to their brand. Instead of being known as ULL anymore, they're known as the University of Louisiana or Louisiana football. So you have a Louisiana State, which is LSU, and then you have a University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and obviously, at Baton Rouge, etc. But if you look at his shirt, it says Louisiana football. So that's a major brand change that they did. And obviously you can see it paying off. Last year they beat Appalachian State and were Sun Belt champions. But again, they've been tops of the Sun Belt, either them or Appalachian State the last few years. And he's been putting up explosive numbers in offense. Now here's a oldie but goodie, Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin doesn't have a conference championship or a national title to his credit as a head coach, but he is a well-known offensive coordinator. If you look at the trend of high-power offenses at Alabama when they moved from quote-unquote game managers at quarterback to quarterbacks that can really, chuck the ball downfield, he was the architect of that era. He did a better job than most people realize at Florida Atlantic, and he's been outstanding recently at Ole Miss. We also have Gary Patterson. That was an unexpected move for him to get let go for his tenure at TCU, increasing their brand to national prominence, in particular defense. It wasn't expected for him to be forced out, but again, he's a fringe candidate for this job. Let's say this. Sonny Dykes, he feels like he is a lead candidate, but again, there's some other contenders as well. Now, Sonny Dykes is at SMU. Here's Tom Herman. He's also been considered. He's a coach that knows the state of Texas well and is known as a good recruiter. So again, there's this game between Louisiana and Texas, and getting players from each. So effectively, what LSU was saying is, if they decided to bring Coach Herman in, that he could, keep Louisiana players in Louisiana and bring players from Texas to Louisiana, because again, with Texas moving into the SEC, if you look at the conference scope of the SEC, LSU is a bigger brand in that conference. So if I want to go SEC, I want to go to the highest brands. Tom Herman, he did not do as well as he originally thought while he was at Texas. He still won games. He took the team to the Big 12 title game, and he beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Again, now we have Sonny Dykes. He did a great job rebuilding the SMU program in Dallas. They marketed themselves as Dallas's team. And this is the best they've been since receiving a death penalty so many years ago. Even though they did lose yesterday, SMU is still 7-1 for the year and going to play in a bowl game and could possibly win double-digit games. Now, another candidate that TCU interviewed is Deion Sanders. Now, his campus came out and said that he did not take an interview there, but TCU said he did well, and he's expected to go for the second round of interviews. Regardless of that fact, Deion Sanders is a fringe candidate for the TCU job. As you know, Deion Sanders is a Hall of Fame cornerback and current head coach of Jackson State University. And his first true recruiting class, Coach Prime beat out many BCS schools, having his FCS class ranked in the top 50 of all of football, beating out a lot, over 50% of BCS schools. He also has a home in the Dallas area and can recruit extremely well in any situation. Another candidate for this job at TCU would be Justin Fuentes. Fuentes announced on Tuesday that he was let go by Virginia Tech after 6 seasons as the Hokies head coach. During his 6-year tenure, Fuente was 43-31 during his time in Blacksburg. Now we can look at again who possibly again a dark horse candidate maybe for LSU would be Shane Beamer. Even though this is only his first season at South Carolina, he's done a great job rebuilding the Gamecocks to be respectable. They weren't getting blew out in regards to their play on the field in previous years, and you can see the improvements in the team. And he's basically taking a basement dweller SEC team and rising them to mid-major with his pedigree. Again, he could be asked to come back home. Excuse me, I said TCU, Virginia Tech. He could be asked to come back and leave Virginia Tech. Currently, he has the Gamecocks at 5-5 this year. Again, that's much better than they've done in previous years. Last year, they went 2-8 in 2020. In their upcoming games, they'll need to beat either Auburn or Clemson to get in their first bowl game since 2018. Beamer played at Virginia Tech under his father and also will serve there as associate head coach and running back coach. He spent time at Georgia and Oklahoma before coming to South Carolina to be his head coach. Now, another candidate for Virginia Tech would be Jamie Caldwell. Coach Caldwell seems to be on everyone's head coaching list, but the reason being he's built Coastal Carolina into a consistent winner. Since taking over the Rams in 2019, he's gone 24-10. He's had previous stops at North Greenville College, Delta State, Charleston Southern, and he took Charleston Southern deep into the FCS playoffs. Last season, they had a historic win at BYU, and I would like to show you the clips of that, or the end of the game, how the Chanticleers pulled out the victory. Now, BYU was undefeated at this time, I believe, and this is the biggest win in the program's history to do it at home. Being a non-Power 5, everyone said that BCU's offensive line would run them over. They had no chance of staying in the game. But if anyone recalls from that season and that epic game, they won. So I just want to show you some clips of the ending of this game.
Running out of time. Wilson out of the end zone. It's caught for the first down at the 41-yard line. A leaping grab by Romney. The Cougars are still alive with 26 seconds left. From the 42. Here comes the rush again. Wilson gets out of it, dumps it to Algier across midfield, and he steps out of bounds. That'll be enough for the first down again to the 46-yard line. All right, 15 seconds left, and clearly Wilson can reach the end zone from here. From the 46. Wilson over the middle.
Now you got a spike.
That's Milne with 9.
Now they got to go.
And a spike with 7 seconds left.
Bring up top. Dax Milne. He's wide open.
The throw to the right. It is caught. He steps out of bounds, does Milne. So they will get one more. I spoke too soon. Now they've got 3 seconds left.
You put every defender's heels on the goal line, and you be ready to knock it down.
Last chance for the Cougars. Milne the catch. Wrestled down on the 2. Coastal wins it.
Almost reminds me of the end of that Super Bowl, Titans-Rams. Remember how close he gets? Boy, this is how close this game was fought. Bill, it stinks somebody's got to lose this game because it was well fought, back and forth, and it was physical. If you like defense, came to the right place.
All right, so you see that game, it was between 2 9-0 teams. And again, being a non-Power 5 team, obviously Coastal Carolina was winning at the end, and they were able to get that stop, that defensive stop to win the game. Another candidate for Virginia Tech, if they wanted to get a proven Power 5 head coach, most people think they should go with Dave Clawson. Dave Clawson currently is the head coach at Wake Forest. His team is 9-1 this year, and they're ranked in the top 10. They are a favorite to win the ACC championship and play at a New Year's Six Bowl. In 8 seasons at Wake Forest, Coach Clawson has a 49-46 record. This season will be his 6th straight season of playing in a bowl game, the longest stretch in program history. Coach Clawson is also known for one of his recruiting tactics by taking 3-star players, redshirting mostly everyone, keeping everyone to be 5th-year seniors, and building programs that way that you have more mature physically as well as mentally players that have been in your system for a long time. And that philosophy has worked. Being, again, if we talk about branding in the state of North Carolina, even if they're not winning, UNC Chapel Hill, NC State, Duke will be bigger brands. So they obviously will get, the better recruits, all being in the same conference in the same state. So Wake Forest had to develop a strategy in which they can still compete in the ACC and vie for championships, but they may not get the same players on signing day. But what they're saying is after 3 years, our players will be better than your players. The next coach I want to talk about is a dark horse candidate at the University of Florida. This coach is Willie Simmons. There is some backdoor channel speculation that the University of Florida is aggressively trying to pursue FAMU's Willie Simmons as their new head coach if Dan Mullen doesn't finish out these final games as expected. And even if he does and gets over 500, it's a strong possibility they consider Coach Simmons as their new head coach. Coach Simmons is a Florida native and former Clemson starting quarterback. This year, Simmons and FAMU set his best record for any FCS or BCS school in the state of Florida. So I'd like to say that again. Of all Division I schools in the state of Florida, whether BCS or FCS, that includes Florida State, Florida, Miami, Florida Atlantic, Florida International, Bethune-Cookman, FAMU. If I'm missing anyone, he has the best record of any Division I team in the state of Florida. Coach Simmons has mastered the transfer portal and has brought relevance back to Florida A&M football. Their only loss this year being to Jackson State 7-6, and that speaks highly of the team that Coach Simmons was able to field. Jackson State's only loss is to a BCS team. They lost to University of Louisiana Monroe 16-9. So this was the first game for both teams, and to play in such a game like that, the first game of the season, I truly hope that doesn't hurt Florida A&M's chances of going to the FCS playoffs, where I think they can get to the Final Four this year and be a team in the national championship. In regards to Coach Simmons, I would like to segue into a topic that a lot of people are discussing, not only in collegiate sports, but professional sports, and that is minority hiring practices. When a college football coaching cycle begins, obviously it started after the second week of the season this year and continues till after the season, throughout bowl season. Black coaches and administrators are always sitting on the edge of their seats with curiosity. College football has left its typical place on the sideline during the demonstrations and discussions about social justice, diversity, and equity following the police murder of George Floyd on May 25th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Questions arise: would a brighter spotlight on equity alter the demographics of college football coaches? Now we know college basketball has already had that paradigm shift, and they have a lot of minority coaches, not only African American, but other minorities as well. College football is just slow to change because it's quote unquote old money. The 2020 season began with 14 black head coaches out of 130 FBS programs. So that's 14 out of 130. The 2020-21 head coaching carousel projected to be less active than normal. That was due to the pandemic and the financial impact on programs. A lot of programs had to cut their budgets in order to support the non-revenue sports on campus. There will be changes, though, and opportunities for more black coaches to lead programs in a sport where 48% of the FBS players identified as black in 2020. So again, there's 48% of the participants of the sport are black, but yet it's hard to get black coaches in that same sport. So that can't be a that can't continue to be an issue in 2021 and moving forward. Coach Mel Tucker is quoted as saying, once I saw jobs start to open up, I wanted to see if there's going to be anything different, whether it be more minorities, coaches of color, hired as head coaches. And this was Michigan State's Mel Tucker who said this, who is a black man. He went on to say he did not see notable differences. He didn't see anything that showed me there was any type of change in the behavior and the hiring processes. Now, the number of black head coaches in college football actually declined in 2020. 3 of the 11 black head coaches at Power 5 programs, Vanderbilt's Derek Mason, Arizona's Kevin Sumlin, and Illinois' Lovie Smith all lost their jobs. And most times when an institution hires a black head coach, they will not hire another one because let's say you gave the minority thing a shot, it didn't work out. Versus if a non-minority or majority coach was fired, there's no issue in bringing in another majority coach. So you can see how that is conflicting. For the first time since 2015, no black head coaches were hired at any Power 5 team. 17 new FBS head coaches, only 2, Marshall's Charles Huff and Buffalo's Maurice Lindquist, are black. Boise State's Andy Avalos, who is Hispanic descent, is the only other hire from an ethnic minority group. There's been several black coaches who were candidates for vacancies, but other than Clemson offensive coordinator Tony Elliott, few found themselves atop wish lists. The magazine The Undefeated spoke to more than 20 administrators, coaches, and other sports officials about past hiring cycles and the factors that contributed to a decline in diversity in collegiate athletics. Industry insiders attribute this decline to the continued shortage of black coaches, to systematic and circumstantial reasons. So by systematic, they mean racism, and circumstantial meaning it's just that's just the way it is. A point to this conservative approach towards this high stakes process of hiring $1 million coaches, the lack of diversity among these hires and assisting with the hires, and also a reluctance to fully embrace the positives of hiring leaders from different races and backgrounds is a flaw of major collegiate athletics holistically. Others note a shortage of top-end black candidates, especially Power 5 coordinators and those with head coaching experience, as well as limited awareness of candidates in other roles. So I don't buy that. I see so many other coaches rise through the ranks who don't play the game, maybe won a team somewhere, GA, work for somebody, and within 5 years they move up the ranks. And there's a stream of qualified individuals that retire from not only collegiate or graduate from collegiate and retire from professional football, but yet there's a glass ceiling that prevents them from elevating in collegiate athletics to the Power 5 level. Robert Morris University's Chris Howard has heard the line from fellow presidents and chancellors. And several things could cost them their jobs, including making unpopular football or basketball coaching hires. So as an athletic director, if I make this hire and it doesn't work out, that means I'm getting fired too, because the board of directors, the boosters, a lot of people that may not have wanted it, and they wanted a traditional majority hire to keep status quo, and say, I told you so, get rid of him. Another big factor in limiting black coaches is nepotism, and particularly in the NFL as well as college. 2 college coaches hired in the last cycle are sons of coaches. You got South Carolina Shane Beamer and Louisiana Monroe's Terry Bowden. Again, they're both sons of Hall of Fame coaches, Frank Beamer and Bobby Bowden. Mel Tucker said, my dad played college football at Toledo, and I didn't have a brother or dad in the business, so it took him longer to climb. He also stated he didn't have any relatives, he didn't have anyone. If you take a look at the NFL, see how many people that are on staffs that are related to other people in the NFL. there is some type of connection. It's like a family profession type deal, very similar to the WWE. And again, he asked a major question: what effect does that have on hiring practices? In closing, I would like to leave you with these final thoughts. Do more minority coaches go to the FCS and HBCU route like Coach Prime to not only gain notoriety, but increase the brand of these schools who originally were tops in college football? So maybe we can see the FCS, the FCS historically black colleges and universities integrated into a BCS conference like the Sun Belt or the uh, American Conference, something like that. Can we see that? Is that a goal like Coach Prime is trying to do at Jackson State right now? Will players and parents step up and not send their children to certain schools if minority hiring practices aren't addressed? Remember, it's all about brand marketing. So if these schools are willing to build $1 million facilities, just like in basketball, when a recruit say, I'm not coming here unless you hire my trainer as an assistant coach or et cetera, you do this. The school that does that, that's where that kid goes. So what if some kids in football did that? Said, we're not coming to this school because look at your coaching staff. And they all go to one school, and that'll make, a domino effect in changes. Another thought to have is, unlike college basketball, college football players don't have the similar autonomy to make this request because there's so many people vying for these spots. Unless it was a large group of people said, we're not going to Alabama this year, we're going to Jackson State or Alabama A&M or Alabama State, it will have to take that out multiple schools to make a change. If not, it'll be so many others to take the spot. You want to get to the point where it's quote unquote almost like mid-major or hacked somewhat, like if we use the professional sports reference, playing in BCS sports, for the administrators to take a look and say, okay, maybe we'll hire more coaches of color. And then again, the last question and what I referenced earlier, will Jackson State's success prepare Deion Sanders and more minority coaches to FBS prominence, or will they try to take the FCS schools to the FBS? If you look at the other conferences, everyone's jumping conferences to get a higher notoriety, but a lot of the HBCUs singularly want to do it, and that effect can also be the reason that if you look at it on a macro level, it affects us in so many other areas of society because as a race, we're trying to do things singular. Again, I don't know, but that's just something to make you go, Thank you for tuning in this week's episode of Sports 101. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Coach_Harp412 and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Make sure you get social with SportsZone Chicago and its litany of shows by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. You can follow SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZoneCHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, we need everyone to download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week at our regularly scheduled time, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. Again, this is Jamar Harp, and you have tuned in to Sports 101. I am gone. On another note, I would like to congratulate all the men of Omega Psi Phi a happy 110th birthday, and the Mighty Tau Psi chapter, happy 90th birthday. Friendship is essential to the soul. All right.